Hey friends, welcome to our weekend highlights where we go back and recap what happened on Sunday. I have a story for you, but more of that in a second. First off, I'd like to thank you for joining us for this video. If you've been joining us online worship or in person, thank you. If this is a recap for you and you would like to join us either in person or online, send me a text. I can notify you when we're having worship and give you the proper links to where you can find videos or the address for our congregation. Okay, let's get into it. Back to our story. So this is the last week of our Ecclesiastes sermon series, and after week one I asked a question on Facebook. I said, was there a time where you asked, what does it matter? And I got a few responses, and then I got a story from a friend, someone I've known all my life, who I hadn't talked to or seen in years. And he sent me this story. I asked if he could share it, and he said, by all means. What does it really matter? Monday, October 2nd, 2017. On the Friday before, my wife Lori had an x-ray that identified a mass on her brain. On Monday, she underwent emergency brain surgery. At 4:30 p.m., the neurosurgeon came out to update me. She said the surgery went fine and Lori was in recovery. Great news. She said they removed a lot of mass. She went on to say that the biopsy done identified the mass as glioblastoma multiforme, more commonly known as GBM. She said we would be referred to an oncologist who would take over treatment. I asked what the treatment entailed, and she informed me typically it was a combination of radiation and chemotherapy. That's not bad, I thought. People go through that every day. I smiled a little. She didn't smile back. She paused as if trying to find her next words. She then went on to explain that a GBM was like sand in the brain. No matter how much she took out by surgery or how much radiation and chemo we did, it was impossible to get it all out, and it would eventually come back aggressively. So what then? Another surgery? No. What are you saying? Can it be cured? No. This will kill her. To this day, I can't think about that conversation in public for fear of having to explain the pain on my face and water in my eyes. I got tired of lying to strangers and telling them I was fine. It wasn't until months later that I thought about the question, what does it matter? But that was after Lori had suffered through treatment, after going downhill and losing all quality of life, when it was painfully obvious that she would lose. Lori would lose. It was in hindsight, but still only a thought. Why do we ever bother with treatment? The treatment was horrible, and it only postponed the inevitable. Wasn't it meaningless? What did it matter? Love. Love mattered. And I'd do anything and everything to keep her with me as long as possible. And I'd do it all over again if I could have her with me for even a moment. I think that question comes up more often than not when we don't know the end to our story, or we don't know if it's going to be a good ending to our story. So maybe you've had that thought, maybe you will have those thoughts in the future, but they always seem to pop up when we are wondering, am I putting in my work and my effort for something that is good, that results in something that's good for me and the people around me? Well, in our last chapter of Ecclesiastes, Solomon highlights the end of our story. And he does so poetically, and I'll take you through it, but he wants us to remember one thing as we approach the end of our story. So listen to Ecclesiastes chapter 12. We start at verse 1. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come, and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. Now he's going to talk about people who are getting older or towards the end of his life poetically. So listen. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars grow dark, and the clouds return after the rain. So a time that's gloomy perhaps. When the keepers of the house tremble and the strong men stoop, when strength is lost. When grinders cease because they are few, and those looking through the windows grow dim. So you're losing things. People say the grinders are your teeth and the windows are your eyes. when the doors to the street are closed and the sound of grinding fades, when people rise up at the sound of birds, but all their songs grow faint, when people are afraid of heights and dangers in the streets, and here's my favorite, when the almond tree blossoms and the grasshopper drags itself along, and desire no longer is stirred. So you think of a grasshopper that's spry and agile, but this one is dragging himself along. It's getting old. What do you say if that's the end of your story? If everything just kind of fades away? You might ask, why are we doing what we're doing right now? Especially the young folks who are listening to this. Why do we put in so much time and work to save up for retirement if this is going to be possibly our retirement? It might be a gamble. Our health might not sustain us, and maybe our spouse, their health might not be there. And so everything that we work for, it kind of ends up in a very bad story with a very anticlimactic ending. Well, verse 1, Solomon asks us to remember something. He says, remember your Creator, especially in your youth, because it's like a storm. Storms will come, and sometimes you get to the edge of the storm and you think something's coming, it's getting breezy, you see a little bit of lightning, but when you're in the center of the storm, you wonder if you'll ever make it out of the storm because you can't see the edges of it. And the lightning and the rain seem to go on forever. But in remembering your Creator, Solomon tells us to look at the overview of our life. If our Creator, before the creation of the world, before there was anything that He made, thought of us in His mind, don't you think that's significant? That we just don't happen to be here. He actually thought us and planned out history so that we would be here in our time, in our place, and experience the things that we experience. And even the worst things that happen in life, the pain, the sorrow, the suffering, any of that, God knows that you're going through it, but He's made you part of a good story. So it's worthwhile going through it. You see, my friend Teddy, in his journal entry, said, we would lose. Lori would lose. And she lost her battle with cancer. And the most stark reminder of sin is death, that our life ceases to be. However, though Lori lost, God never lost Lori. Because God loved Lori so much that when something came between him and her, He decided to take action. God loved you and me so much that when something separated us from Him, He decided to take action. And when sin was that problem, He sent the solution to that sin. And in fact, He took on the pain and suffering that that sin would ultimately bring in death, and He put it on His Son, who went to the cross and died for us. And not only did Jesus die, but He rose again on the third day. And suddenly you begin to see that even the worst things in life, God has made good. God made good out of death. That Lori, in her death, went to be with her Creator. That you and me, in our death, even when we grow old, that's not the end of our story. We don't get weak. We're won by our Creator. And so, we have a good story. We have a good overview to our life, where we can see the edges of the storm coming when Christ returns again and gives us a glorious body, a wonderful life. That's why it's important to remember your Creator. So you can see the story, and that God works for the good of those who love Him, even in your pain and suffering and sorrow, because He's done it for death. He's done it for everything. That's our lesson for this last week. A few other highlights that are going on. We are doing confirmation for kids in 6th grade and above on Sundays. If you have a kid who you'd like to be part of that, that's how we are training our next generation of spiritual leaders for God's kingdom. And then this next Sunday, we're going to plant plants in the front of our church, and we want families to bring their kids so that we can model how to serve in certain ways in our congregation. So that's after church on Sunday. If you want to join us here in person, you are welcome to do that. We have plenty of space. You see our sanctuary. If you want to join us online, please do so. All of our information will be on our website. Check it out. That's it for today. Those are our highlights. I'm Pastor John, and this is Crown of Life Church in New Orleans East. And as always, we'd love to see you. Until then, God's peace be with you.